Hi. I thought I'd talk a little bit about the lack of women in my fiction. I am not sure why I am so fascinated by men, but I am, and I have been from the time I was very small. There's a possibility that I realized at a young age that all the men seem to have the power. All the men seem to have the voice. And when I envisioned myself as any sort of superhero when I was a kid, I always gravitated toward male figures. That's what I had to emulate. It's curious though, because you would think that I might then write books with very strong female characters, and I've actually gone in the opposite direction. I find that a little interesting given that I am absolutely a feminist and consider myself a strong woman. However, the women in my novels are not so much. As a matter of fact, there are very few women in my novels in general. In The Crossing, we get Joel's mother. In I Too Have Suffered in the Garden, we get Adam's mother briefly and Adam's sister. In Smoke and Glass, we have the merest glimpse of Joel's mother. And of course, Elizabeth, or Lizzie, as James calls his wife. And none of those characters fare particularly well. Of course, in Crossing, well, if you've read The Crossing, you know what happens to Joel's mom. And if you want to take a peek at what happens to James's wife, you are welcome to take a look at The Killing Jar, which is a short story told not even from the perspective of James's wife, but told about her. And you can find that on my website in the short fiction section. I really like writing from the perspective of men. I'm curious about them, and I'm curious about the ways they interact. All kinds of relationship, friendships, romantic relationships, father-son dynamics. I'm curious about all of that and am not that interested in the women. It's funny because in some ways I feel such a responsibility to make sure that I'm presenting Joel, James, Adam in a realistic light. It's been gratifying to me over the years to have men, particularly gay men, write to me and tell me that I have gotten it right, that I've written their story, that they can relate to Joel or James or Adam, because I want to make sure that there's such a fine line between an accurate portrayal and appropriation. And I try to be very cognizant of that line as a straight woman. At the same time, I'm really curious about the ways that I ignore my own feminist inclinations. I don't feel any responsibility to portray women in a positive light, to portray strong or powerful women. The women in these novels just don't fare that well, and I'm okay with that. I'd like to hear what you think. So please do let me know. Let me know if it bothers you that there aren't more women. Let me know what you think about Celeste in Smoke and Glass. Let me know what you think about Lizzie, James's wife, and we'll see what happens in book 4.